Hello and welcome to Is This England, a show where we talk about old England games and ask just how England was this.
We're back for more delicious Rous Cup action. With Scotland winning the inaugural tournament, England are out for revenge. As the tournament takes a dramatic detour, we dive in for part two.
You may be a stranger, that's what time can do. Baby, you mean everything to me.
Okay, we're back in the Rous, in da Rous.
Fucking yes. That's just blown me. That's just blown my mind. The Rouse, as in house.
You got it, you got it. That show with what's his name in? Hugh Laurie, Rous.
Right, just Stanley Rouse just walking around being really pissed off that no one's shook his hand and has to go through like every single time there's another situation where only he can solve that no one's shook his hand.
I'll take it that that's the premise of the show, which I've not watched, but has come up in conversation in my life twice in the last week now.
You are an absolute box set fiend as well. You are like
I
you.
know.
You tell me you're starting stuff, and all of a sudden it's just oh, that's done now.
I watch too much TV. What can I say?
It's great. House is great. I really think House is great TV. That should be one on your list. I think.
Yeah. Does he have a cup?
He
A
has a
house
cup. Does
cup.
he have a cup? Yeah, he drinks some coffee. Yeah, Hugh
Yeah.
Laurie does his generic American accent, which is fine. But yeah, he's like, addicted to pain pills and all sorts, and he's very grouchy and whatever. But yeah, great show.
I can relate. Since we last spoke, England have played Scotland in modern times
Yes.
and ran out 3-1 winners thanks to an own goal from Harry Maguire.
Yeah, that was the headline, was it? Great.
Do you have anything to say on that? Thought England probably looked pretty good from what I've seen of the highlights.
Yeah, I thought England were great. They withheld the first like Scotland for the first 10 minutes and just kept it all really calm. And then they just kind of switched into gear and kind of went away and bossed Scotland in a way that I didn't quite think they were gonna. It felt like a huge banana peel to me that did of England could really go and Scotland have never been in better form really in kind of like modern times to kind of punch up to England. And it was just a really interesting game, but England just kind of just kept their foot on the gas throughout. There was a bit of a lull after the in the start of the second half, and obviously Maguire's own goal kind of brought Scotland back to life. But that was the only way they were ever really going to get back into it. England looked really impressive, and in my eyes, anyway, collected the Rous Cup, which I think they should. Again, they should. There's rumours that England are going to play in Cardiff next year.
Right.
So
For
maybe
the
they're
Rose
kind of
Cup.
doing their own little home nations thing, like home championships. They're bringing it back a bit.
Yeah, I'm not against it. Well, we should know that by now about
Yeah.
each other's opinions. Um, but yeah, we only really pretend to care about the modern day. It's all about the past for us.
Yes.
So we're picking up where we left off with the Rous Cup, a tournament that rose from the ashes of the end of the home nations, killed off after 100 years. It's Rose Cup now. That's it. Ireland, Wales, goodbye. It's just England and Scotland.
Yeah.
Um, is there much further context that's needed to bring everyone up to speed as to where we are and what we're going to be looking at today?
Well, yeah. First thing, if you've not listened to the last episode, do. It's great. I thoroughly enjoyed doing that one and doing all the history between England and Scotland. Scotland were basically created as a spite FA, I think you called them, which is absolutely correct. And it was the quick history of that. And then last time round, Scotland were the victors in the first game. Yeah, it was a bit of a blood and guts affair. Again, we watched a lot of the game, but in reality, we were just there for Terry Venables and the other stuff that was going on around it.
Yeah, the presentation at the end when as you
Oh
say,
yeah,
Scotland lifted the inaugural trophy. Absolutely disgusting. So that was in 1985. I think was your time capsule entry for 1985 a film?
yes, 1985 for me was Brewster's Millions.
That was it. Brewster's Millions. How could I forget? In 1986, just 12 months later, the world has changed somewhat. Um, and I'm going with The Queen is Dead, an album I was going to say the fourth album by the Smiths, but it's not. It's the third, according to Wikipedia. Always hard to
Really?
tell with 80s and 70s bands.
Yeah, because there's lots
What
of
counts as an
EPs that
album?
get snuck in there. That it's kind of extended plays. Then, oh, by the way, we've got this massive collection of something else. I was like, when did this come out then?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I feel like I didn't give it the grandiosity that it deserved as an introduction there. I kind of lost where I was for a moment. But The Queen is Dead is going in. It was my introduction to the Smiths.
Mm.
This was back when internet for me wasn't so readily available. And I lived with my mom Monday to Friday and would see my dad at weekends, but it was only my dad who had internet at that time. But he was familiar with torrenting, and yeah, I had a collection of albums, like I'd pretty much, well, I definitely had listened to everything that Oasis had ever done a couple of times by this point, and I thought, you know what, it's time to spread those wings. And I remember on like a Sunday going, I want to listen to Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division and The Queen is Dead by the Smiths. Can you sort that for when I'm back next weekend? And he did, and he did. I definitely remember out of those two preferring Joy Division at first,
Yeah.
partially because the torrent of the Smiths' The Queen is Dead was really low in volume. And it was just, it's like, I want to enjoy it, but I'm not getting anything. So I found a tool online, a compression tool. So compression basically just makes stuff sound louder. And
Right.
I compressed the living shit out of The Queen is Dead. Honestly, the song The Queen is Dead, which starts the album, is a loud one anyway, quite heavy. And that used to crunch in my headphones. And for years, I kind of like I didn't even. It was hard to listen to it. I'd messed with the audio that much, and for years I still didn't give it the credit it deserved. But nowadays, I've got AirPods. We've got nicely remastered music through Apple,
Yeah.
and yeah, I've lived with that album for a good few years now, and I love it. In 2013, it was named by NME as the greatest album of all time. I'll pass it over to you at this point, Nick, for what you make of that.
Yeah, I was working for the enemy at that point and wrote that review clearly. No, yeah, I think it's great. It's hard to say in terms of the Smiths because I love them and was kind of probably introduced to them around the same time as yourself as well.
Yeah.
I don't have any fun torrent stories, I'm afraid. It was purely just
No
I
stories about
fit
compression.
no compression stories. I'm compressionless. I think I was just only hoping that my version was right, and I was just like, right, I'm going to make all of the songs have the correct names and probably put a number in front of them just so they do run in the same order and all that horrible stuff you had to do when you just couldn't afford music or whatever. So you do that. But no, I loved it. I think with the Smiths, my favorite is always kind of there's a collection. I think it's called Louder Than Bombs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing I would always go. That's my kind of Smiths that I'll always turn to. But for song, back to back, The Queen is Dead is a classic. It's like the album cover itself is quite classic as well. Like
Yeah.
you like so many. I'm pretty sure I had a Smith shirt with the album cover on,
Yeah.
and
I imagine you probably did. I
yeah,
imagine I
yeah,
would have wanted one.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think it's a brilliant album. It's kind of bringing their classic sound almost to its pinnacle, really, with the more classical elements to it
I
as well,
agree.
more string sections as well. Johnny Marr's kind of on a huge tear in it as well.
Yeah, it's like the first couple of albums are really unique and interesting and quirky. And this still has quirky moments, which we'll get onto in a bit. But it is, like you say, a bit of a pinnacle. Like the anthems and the big songs on there are so well crafted. They could be from any classic sort of British band. And I guess
Mm.
they're slightly polished off some of the rough edges to achieve that. But because of the nature of the band, they're still very kind of distinctive, and it keeps the essence of what is them. I was looking at the track list earlier. Frankly, Mr. Shankly, Vicar in a Tutu, and Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others. That's it's only like a 10-track album, and those are three of them. So I guess it depends what you make of that style of the Smiths. I'm kind of a fan. I
I
like the silly songs.
Yeah, I don't mind them. They're not ones that I'll ever go, that's going on the playlist.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's like Bob almost having like three joke songs. It's almost kind of like McCartney's like granny rock kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
like we've got that in there. We've just got to scratch that itch. But kind of they're silly because of Morrissey's lyrics. The music behind them is great. Like some girls are bigger than others. The music behind that is beautiful, but it's just
Yeah.
made really silly by Morrissey's like
Song
he's,
about
he's,
tits.
he's yeah, exactly, just being daft on that as well. And you kind of probably say it's true for the rest of them, so that's why they're weird. But still, just can't just say they're not classic songs as well, even though they're ones I wouldn't pick myself to go. Yep, I'll mark those out for a good listen.
Yeah. I think Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others in particular is the one song where Johnny Marr has said, I don't like what Morrissey did with my music on that one. I would have preferred for it. Because I have seen interviews where with him where they've said like it must have been weird for you to do these songs that sound so good and then come back and hear all manner of strangeness, whether it's songs about vegetarianism or shagging in a cemetery or whatever it may be. And he said, and I think his response was like, no, because I thought he was brilliant. I thought Morrissey was brilliant and I absolutely trusted him to do everything. And I pretty much liked everything he did except for on that one, because I think the music is so good. It does feel a bit of a waste, but there you go. I've been very big into the Smiths recently, and when I saw it pop up when I was looking for my time capsule, it felt fitting that we could have a chat about it.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely perfect, isn't it? And obviously, probably the big song from it, "There Is a Light," like
Yeah.
written in every single bar and pub in Manchester somewhere. Is that I was in Manchester at the weekend, and the pub I went into had that just plastered on the wall, along with like every other photo of everyone from the north you've ever seen in your life,
Yeah.
and about 19 pictures of Morrissey and Marr and all that stuff. So yeah, it's an absolute classic. It's been covered all by, from I think it's been done by one of those awful M&S throaty
Yeah,
acoustic
yeah.
ones. I feel like they've just gone, yeah, you can fucking just have that. Who cares? But it's been covered well as well. I remember Noel Gallagher did a version I really liked.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's that's probably the pinnacle of songwriting for Johnny Marr and Morrissey. Just all works
Hmm.
so well. Um, but yeah, we've got more important things to talk about than bloody rock and roll.
Oh yes,
We got Rouse and Ball. Do you get
I do. Sorry. Yes.
it? Right then. So we've finished football wise in 1985 with Scotland lifting the trophy high. Obviously, 1986 is a World Cup year as well. I'm imagining we're going to touch on that. Well, I know that we're going to touch on that, but really, today's show is all about the big stuff. There's life and death and everything in between. And
Oh.
where else? Well, I mean, where are we going to start, Nick?
We're going to start right off the back end of England losing that Rous Cup final. So no time for them to mope and mourn about, losing this newly formed, really important thing. England have got a plane to catch,
A plane
and they've
back to England.
no, not back to England. It's not like today when footballers just can't go 3 minutes without getting on an airplane.
Yeah.
They'd have definitely just got the coach, wouldn't they, up
Oh
from England
yeah.
to Scotland
Had the
for the
tunes
game.
on.
Yeah, about the tunes. They could have passed those Scotland fans on the way back as well. Just giving them the V's as they go back to Wembley, and the Scotland fans back to wherever the hell they went to as well.
Scotland.
Went to Scotland, but they went from somewhere in particular, didn't they? There was like a group of Scotland fans who were from one like particular town. I think Lothing is where it's from.
Ah, okay.
The long train back to Lothing does sound like quite a Smiths lyric, actually.
Yeah. Well, if England aren't getting a train back to a plane back to England, where the hell are they getting a plane to? Don't leave me hanging.
They are obviously off to Mexico.
Mexico.
Mexico, yeah. So while Stanley Rouse was presenting the trophy to Graham Souness and telling Gordon Strachan to fuck off, England were off on their next money spinning tour to play in the Ciudad de Mexico Cup. I'll end up saying that 9 different times. I've got no idea how to pronounce this word, but
Very,
it
very
is
brave.
that. Yes, it is this Mexican tournament.
This Mexican tournament, that is definitely a Smith song, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yeah. Once again, England are invited to a tournament being used as like a road test for the World Cup. So think Le Tournoi, but Mexican and far more admin.
So, so this is Mexico's World Cup preparation tournament, or is it for the teams
Yes.
involved there, and it just happens to be in Mexico?
No, this is kind of Mexico going, right, we need to road test this because I'm pretty sure this World Cup had been
Oh,
awarded.
the
I think
World
this
Cup
had
was
been
in Mexico, right? In the 80s.
yes,
Makes a
the
bit
next
more
World Cup is
sense.
in Mexico. So they're going, we need to road test this because I think it had been awarded somewhere else. I want to, this may be incorrect, but I'm pretty around it, not far from this. There is another World Cup that is also in Mexico. And
Yeah,
it's weird kind of them having them so close to one another. But I think it had been awarded to someone like Colombia.
yeah.
And
I've got
they've
Wikipedia up.
gone, right, something bad has happened here. You're not allowed the World Cup anymore. Where are we going to hold it? Mexico, obviously.
Economic reasons is the cited reason on Wikipedia for it not being in
And was
Colombia.
that Colombia?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm glad that's just in there, stopping me from doing things like stopping me from like, learning languages or anything really important. Just knowing that Colombia once didn't have a World Cup because of reasons, let's say.
So we've got a little Le Tournoi for the 80s.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
good.
we absolutely have. The team scheduled to play in the tournament were hosts Mexico, also World Cup holders Italy, and the European champions Germany.
Strong. I
Strong,
mean,
very strong,
I don't know
and
why England are in there.
like it's the same thing every single time. England are just invited because clearly there's some sort of money spinning going on there.
Yeah, yeah. The popularity of the clubs, surely, but it's not like it was. It's not like it is now. It's not like people in Mexico are watching the Premier League. The Premier League
No,
doesn't
well,
even exist.
yeah, exactly. But you've still got like you get like we said last time. There's lots of English teams are doing well in Europe, but it still feels like England was seen as oh you've got to invite them. Like it's rude not to.
Yeah,
Like if you
we
don't
did
invite
invent
them,
this
like
game.
stuff's gonna happen. Like because clearly someone's like still running FIFA or something who's English by this point. I don't think like Blatter or is it João Havelange? They're probably not in charge. But I mean, Havelange was about a million years old, so he could have been. But yeah, they're there. But however, there's a big twist in the story where Germany arrived in Mexico too late to fully take part in the entire tournament. So
that's very
instead,
that's very unlike Germany, isn't it?
I know I've not quite got to the bottom of why they're so late, but they are late for a reason. So they can't take part in this and were instead excluded from this Mexican tournament, which would only take place between England, Mexico, and Italy. So they're out of the Ciudad de Mexico Cup
Yeah.
and they're banished from that. However, as Germany were in the country, Mexico set up a second tournament and hastily renamed it Azteca 2000.
Azteca 2000. That sounds like a Greek computer
Yeah.
from
Well,
the 80s.
I mean, Azteca 2000, that is the ultimate. Fuck, what are we going to call it? Where are we playing the games? The Azteca or Azteca 2000?
That's a big year coming up in the
Yeah.
future. Can I
You
just
must have been looking at some sort of like calendar or something like Y 2000. Just call it Azteca 1986 or not. Yeah, 19. Well, it's 1985 at this point. So why don't you just call it 85?
I just want to raise the prospect that hosting a free team tournament isn't really preparation for hosting the World Cup. That is just 4 or 5 games happening in a country.
But also with just the three-team tournament to then just go, oh, Germany are late. Well, you're out.
You're out. Yeah, run
You're
a
gone.
tight ship.
Yeah, you can't besmirch the good name of the Ciudad de Mexico Cup, which was invented purely for this. Instead,
Yeah,
they're just going, you're gone, but oh, you are here, so we're not going to be horrible. So you can have another tournament.
you can have the Azteca 2000.
Yeah.
So
So
do they have to
this
get more
tournament.
countries in?
No, so this tournament instead, the second tournament would have Mexico, Germany, and England all playing. However, the games between Mexico and England would count for both tournaments.
Your face there. You know what's like how this works because you read it before, but you looked pissed off and confused.
I'm just they're just creating admin for themselves because I think the idea was that Germany arrived, so they missed their game against Italy. So instead of just reschedule that game for probably the day that England were playing Mexico, they were like, "You've missed your chance."
Yeah, you've missed. But what are Italy thinking at this point? Because Mexico and England have got more games to play than them.
So yeah, so again, it's so confusing this. So England will play Italy and Mexico, which will count for the first tournament. Again, this is just making my eyes go crossed. It will count for the first tournament. Italy will play Mexico as well. They'll count for the first tournament, but that England Mexico game will count for two tournaments.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Exactly. Got it. Nice and simple. No problems there. Right. We move on to the start of the Ciudad de Mexico Cup with Italy and Mexico playing out an opening 1-1 draw. So that was all worth it.
All of that for a 1-1 draw. Jesus, come on.
So yeah, that's that, which leads up to the second game, which is England v Italy. And it just got me thinking. There seems to have been a lot of England v Italy games down the years, and England don't particularly do well in them.
No, well, one stands out.
One stands out, yeah, and also they're all kind of a lot of the games are kind of tucked away and hidden in these dark corners of history. Like there's these odd tournament qualifications, which I think we've kind of like spoken about before. And then by the time they actually play each other in qualification, aside from '98, the games are kind of done already. Like we look at the qualification that's going on currently, England are quite ahead at the moment. It'd be really surprising if they didn't qualify.
Yeah.
And the game at Wembley is kind of like, okay, well, it's not
It's
the end of the
looking-
world. It's near qualification. Italy, if they're going to win that, they'll probably qualify for the World Cup as well. There's no real hindrance if England lose it.
Yeah, and I mean, unless Italy qualify and turn up late, and
Yeah,
then it
well,
really.
exactly. They've got to be on time. We should take a look at the Mexicans here. But yeah,
Yeah,
apart from like that, there's a lot of dicking about in places that no one should be. So England and Italy play each other in the Bicentennial Cup,
well, yeah, that's the ultimate example,
the
really.
ultimate.
The only one I can, the only thing I can think of that's close to the bicentennial is this Mexican tournament, as it's been dubbed, and the Azteca.
Yes. But also you've got England do play Italy in the Tournoi as well, which we've covered.
Of course, yeah,
They also played each other in the Nations League before this year's World Cup, last year's World Cup just gone.
yeah. That rings a
Yeah.
slight bell.
Again, your face is, yep, I think that scans, that's fine.
I
And then
haven't
there's
got time to
two,
check it, but yeah,
yeah, and there's no need to know. There's no way anyone can know. And there's apart from then we've got Euro 2021, a game which we'll never cover. We've already said that.
yeah.
There's not really many big kind of like main stage headliner clashes against the two. There's Euro 2012, which is such an awful game, no one ever wants to think about it again.
Yeah, that's the. Is that the Sterling fake goal or is that the Perlo chip?
That's the Perlo chip because the
Yeah,
only thing anybody remembers about that game is the fan behind the goal trying to put Perlo off by getting his willy out.
yeah. God, that would. Yeah, that the result and the chip, the penalty, Panenka do overshadow what was a despicably bad game.
Awful. I'm pretty sure, like, I think Italy hit the post or the woodwork in the first minute. England went up the other end and Glenn Johnson somehow missed an open goal and then nothing happened for the rest of the game. I think Joe Hart had the best passing accuracy of any England player,
Jesus Christ,
which,
The Hodgson
which
era.
yeah, which I kind of feel bad for because he took over just before the tournament after Capello fucked off. But anyway, there's also only one other I can ever really think of, and that's the 2014 World Cup game. But I feel like that one took place so late at night, everyone's forgotten about it.
That was the Raheem Sterling ghost goal.
That's the Sterling one, and I was watching in the pub, and I think it kicked off about 1 a.m.
It was close. Yeah, it was close to that. Definitely.
It was bad, and I remember just ordering a bottle of wine at half time, and then just clearly the night didn't go well after that.
I'm just reading about the 2012 game to see if there's anything that happened. There was a they mentioned what you have, and apparently Wayne Rooney almost stole the win with a bicycle kick in extra time.
Really?
Yeah. Also, this sentence is funny that England made a quick change in extra time as Jordan Henderson replaced Scott Parker, but Italy managed to still hold the initiative.
Oh,
So
that's a
that didn't
dig.
do it. 11 years ago, Jordan Henderson. But yeah, so the point we're making is England v Italy, frequent rivalry, but not much of an actual competitive rivalry.
Not really, because you think again, I had to really stretch to think of those like tournament games against Italy, and there's just so much messing around, and this to me is another messing around kind of game and just dicking around, but always playing each other in strange and foreign lands, and yeah, it's odd because you look at this game here and watching the highlights, there is just nobody in the stand,
Yeah, in
and
Mexico.
in Mexico, which is, I mean, who wants to go and see Italy v England in Mexico in a friendly tournament that is now only counted for half or whatever we're doing
It's
here?
one hell of a money spinner, then, isn't it? If nobody wants to go.
It feels like a failed brand launch or something. Like they really thought this was going to catch on.
Yeah,
Like this
yeah,
old England thing was going to really, take to the Mexicans' heart. But it's just also because no one's in the stadium. How is this of any value to Mexico? Because no one's going into the stadium, which is the whole point of like putting something like this on to see if the infrastructure works.
yeah. Just looking at the England stats, England Football Online website, they refer to this tournament as the Little World Cup
Oh,
in
okay.
in quote marks. So maybe that's what it. But yeah, there's not much to it. It was played at an altitude of 7,350 feet.
Which I'm assuming is bad.
Um, I don't know. uh,
Yeah.
Mick Channon was on commentary in the UK for this game.
Oh, bit of Channon on the comms, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I got distracted there. Where were we? We were saying that yeah, it's not really a good practice run for Mexico if nobody's going because presumably people will go when it's the proper World Cup.
Yeah, and then there's this. This just doesn't make sense at all. And after this as well, I don't know if this was a factor, but this was played on the backdrop of the Heysel disaster as well, where Liverpool had been playing Juventus in the European Cup final, and altercations between fans had meant that 39 Juventus fans lost their lives that day. So it's another thing of just like, oh, okay, do we want to go to England v Italy where these like
Yeah.
potentially there's been bad stuff that's just literally just happened. I mean, Trevor Francis and Ray Wilkins were both interviewed about this in the build-up and were keen to play the game as like a sign of solidarity between the two nations, and the two sides actually line up alongside each other as well. So it's kind of already looking to mend bridges, really.
Plus the money.
Plus the money. Yeah, I mean, this game was far along, like already organized, but I think there were questions of like, well, would they play this game? I mean, if it had got called off, Mexico would not have been happy. That's another one scrubbed off the list.
So the game itself, then, did we put them aside with ease?
It's actually quite a good game from what I saw of it. Brian Robson misses a really good chance on 70 minutes, and then moments later, the Italy player Bagni chips across to the far post, and it just totally lobs Shilton like David Seaman style, like straight over his head, clawing away at it. No chance really. So Italy take the lead. Mark Haitley plying his trade in Italy at the time with the nickname Attila the Hun. That's great. Equalises of England for England with a header, and then Italy win it in injury time with a penalty. So no luck for England in their first game. Italy on a win and a draw. I was going to say 4 points, but I don't even think it was 3 points for a win back then.
So I've just been doing a little bit more digging as well on the game and everything surrounding it. The stadium, the Azteca Stadium, holds a capacity of 83,264, and there were just 8,000 spectators in that game.
Wow.
The stadium hosted the World Cup final in 1986, so they got to see what it was like a tenth full.
Oh yeah, this is what happens if we've got an awful game on no one wants, and by some accident we've just let it happen here.
And yeah, but screw everyone who didn't go because they missed a decent match.
Missed a good game, yeah. And then England would play Mexico next, which takes place officially inside the confines of the Sueda del Mexico Cup, but also counts towards the Azteca 2000. So big game.
Big,
It's
you
for
rarely
both
get.
belts.
Yeah, yeah, a unification bout. You never really get those anymore, do you? This Champions League final match is also for the Premier League title.
It's also for like it's like if Sevilla ever got to the Champions League final, it'd still somehow be for the Europa League.
That's the perfect example. 100%.
Exactly. Well, you'll be glad to know that England lose 1-0, meaning Italy win the tournament on goals scored and England finishing bottom. All good stuff.
I lost that there. Who were England? They lost to Mexico.
They lost 1-0 to the Mexicans, as Mike Bassett would say.
Yeah, and it's all gone to shit.
Yeah, and Italy win, even though they didn't play one of their games against Germany, they still come out winners, and Mexico finish in the middle of the pack, but move on to the next tournament, as do England.
So lost with it. Oh, hang on. Do you mean the World Cup?
No, there is still the rest of the Azteca 2000 to play now.
Just go for it, Nick. Just put me out my bloody misery. There can't be that much left of this.
So
these
England end this
tournaments.
tournament, but also find themselves midway through their Azteca 2000 journey, and they have a game against West Germany on the 12th of June.
Okay,
So
that's
Germany are here. They've literally just gotten off the plane the day before. It's been delayed, and they get shoved onto the pitch to play England.
that's the circumstances we like.
Oh yes, definitely undercooked, hugely undercooked. Yeah, so they got off their long haul flight, which again in the mid 80s, great but abysmal.
Yeah, great.
Like
But
could have had a great time on there, but you know you'd have to have recovered for days and days, especially to Mexico. So yeah, they weren't in good shapes, which was good for England because England beat West Germany 3-0.
take it.
Absolutely take it. Goals from Brian Robson and 2 from Kerry Dixon this day. So great win for England.
Yeah, that's a great win. The altitude again an issue. So yeah, Germany are getting used to that, but they will make excuses, won't they?
I know, yeah. What more do you want?
You've had a day to train, unpack, sleep, get used to the altitude, arrive at the stadium, sort your team and your tactics out, and play.
No, we haven't managed to get someone to buy all the cigarettes for you yet.
No, that will come later if you
Yes,
win.
exactly. That'll come once you played your first game, you lazy bastards.
So West Germany are not having a great time in the Azteca /
Correct.
Little World Cup. Insert the correct one here.
Yeah. Yeah. 3 days later, they're wheeled out yet again, this time to play Mexico, and they lose that one too, which means that Mexico do win a tournament that they've literally just invented through admin, and they win the Azteca 2000. I assume Italy just couldn't wait to get back to their own gorgeous hot country and just couldn't be bothered to play Germany, so they just went home.
Yeah. I mean, what's keeping you here, Italy?
Well, yeah, apart from just, the prestige of this cup that they just made up for preparation for the World Cup, but that's all fine. So that's been done. England finish middle of the group, but a good win over West Germany, which is few and far between.
Yeah.
Even today, there's been one recent memory, but really, that's a one-sided rivalry as well. Just a lot more headlines around it.
And after all of that, England are finally on a plane back to England.
Yep, England don't want to miss the chance while over in North America to do some sightseeing and retail therapy. So they arrange a friendly in Los Angeles just 4 days after the West Germany game. So they've pissed off as well after the West Germany game to go and play in LA. But at the same time, that other tournament is Azteca Cup is still going on.
Is that because we finished bottom? I
So
guess
we
it is,
thought,
right?
oh, we beaten Germany. It doesn't matter. So even if somehow Germany and Mexico that game would have meant England could have won, they wouldn't have even been there to take the trophy home. Although I bet that there can't have been a trophy.
Oh God, I bet there was. I bet
I don't
there
know.
was.
It had been invented literally days earlier by accident.
How long does it take to make a trophy on average?
I don't know. You'll have to go on. Is this trophies?
So England, I mean, logic would dictate that they will be playing against the USA in Los
Yes.
Angeles, but I'm not gonna be 100% sure
Overstep.
on that until you tell me that that's what happened.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, since the bicentennial tournament, designed as a springboard for US soccer, things haven't really developed for the hosts how they would have hoped, and their international side has not gone on in any sort of way, and they lose 5-0 to England, the USA do, even despite Glenn Hoddle missing a 15th minute penalty to get scoring underway. So even that doesn't put a damper in England's step. They win 5-0, and they're then able to start thinking about going home finally.
So did the USA still have Pele and Gordon Banks playing for them at that point, or
I'm afraid not. They weren't allowed to play in these games.
okay, some great names: Mike Windishman, Harry van der Beek, Ed Radwanski, Hugo Perez, Dick Davis, Bruce
Dick
Murray,
Davis. He must have been had a bit of English in him.
yeah, Troy Snyder, not
Oh,
Schneider,
great.
Snyder. But yeah, the England lineup, as you say, includes Lineker, Terry Butcher, Chris Waddle, Peter Reid's there, John Barnes is there,
Yeah. All the favourites.
all the favourites, all the lads, and surely now England can go home and focus on qualifying for the World Cup.
Yep, and we are back to the very normal stuff of the World Cup qualifications for 1986. So they could go back to Mexico. So great stuff.
Great prep for England actually. Made
Yeah.
money, got a little holiday, got to beat Germany.
So much of it, because I feel like England go on these little tours, and so much of it is just, oh, where would we like to go? Like it
Yeah,
feels like the players almost get a say in it half the time.
especially back then as well. You know,
Oh,
I don't think many of them were as well travelled men as probably they are now. You know, that the young lads of the modern era.
yeah, they're still probably all going to like Scarborough for holidays, aren't they? Really, unless they get to go here, where I'll bring the wife and kids out, definitely.
Yeah, or Blackpool. Nothing.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, but there's nothing wrong with England's qualification record so far when we last left them as well. Started off with 3 wins and a draw, leaving them in an okay position. The wins included a 5-0 against Finland, an 8-0 in Turkey, as well as a hard-fought 1-0 against Northern Ireland, the forever home championships holders.
Yeah, that's a good way of. I'm sure that's how they want to be known. It's not
Oh,
a bad
yeah.
claim to fame.
They've got that trophy in their Hall of Fame in their museum of Northern Irish football, as they well should.
Yeah, as they well should. England, however, have a secret weapon. It's not going to win them the home championships because that can't happen again. But
Mm.
we got an interesting striker who, I'll be honest, I haven't heard of before, and yeah,
I
I'm
was
guessing you're
gonna I
going
was
to
gonna
illuminate me.
yeah, I was gonna ask you, what was your knowledge of a man who England are playing a lot around this time, and he's doing well for England. One Mark Haitley. Any thoughts?
I have no. Well, I mean, I've read his Wikipedia today, but prior to that, no. Um, I mean, do you have you heard of the Haitley?
I've heard of the Haitley, definitely. Yeah, I've heard of him. Again, he comes along in the wrong period for us, really. He's not someone we've spoken about on the podcast either, because I think you'd have had a bit more knowledge of him if we'd have had done. So we're
Yeah.
going to go in slightly into him because, like I say, he's a bit of a forgotten man in general for England. I feel, even though he played a fair amount for England, and yeah, we'll kind of do a little bit of a dive quickly. Haitley made his professional debut for Coventry in the late 70s, and around this period also had 19 games out on loan at Detroit Express.
Was that a bicentennial loan? Well, I
It
think he
probably
was
would
just
have been
after
in
the
the
bicentennial, wasn't he?
yeah,
When he
probably would have
started.
been in the dying days of that really, because I don't think like that league really worked for a long time. So they were like, yeah, let's get this. I mean, how do you even scout someone like this who's just playing at Coventry?
Yeah, it's very true. I have no idea,
No.
and it's hard to find greater details. There are a couple of pictures of him at Detroit Express. He looks like a normal tall man.
Normal tall man with long hair. Yeah, Haitley then moved to Portsmouth in 1983 for a season before being bought by AC Milan.
So, were Portsmouth doing well?
I think they were doing fine. I think Mark Haitley was doing well, despite if Portsmouth were or not. He was really popular in Milan as well. He notched up 17 goals during his 3 year stay, which doesn't seem much, but
Yeah.
kind of this was like the most defensive, high quality league in the world still around this time. So
Yeah.
even just 17 goals, he wasn't always a starter for Milan, but he was seen as like a useful player to bring in at least.
Couple of things. Just reading on the wiki here. So, um, Portsmouth were in the second division
Ah.
when he played for them, and caught the eye of AC Milan. 1 million pound transfer from the second division. That's pretty
Good.
good going. In his time at Milan, um, he had to have 4 operations because of injuries, and that's over the course of 3 years. And I think kind of notable aside from that for getting a winner against AC Milan.
Inter.
Sorry, yeah, against Inter
Yeah.
Milan.
Yeah. But
So let's
it's
go.
it's weird because he doesn't look dissimilar to a bit of the Van Basten. Like there's a
Ye-
picture I've got. I'll definitely share this one because it's a nice one. Him and Ray Wilkins, because Ray Wilkins was at Milan at the time as well.
That's where
And
it's all happening then. Wilkins has gone
yeah,
get my boy in.
exactly. And you've still got Trevor Francis who's out playing in Italy as well. So it was the first kind of time English players had gone abroad and had clearly done well, like you say. And this is right before AC Milan kind of go into their peak of late 80s, 90s, unbeaten team, winning all before them. This is just before that starts. So it's again slightly forgotten period for them as well. Haitley does leave Milan in 1987 and goes to Monaco for 3 years and does really well there too. And then ends up at Rangers for 5 years in the early 90s. And again, really well thought after there as well. So he's kind of doing all of his best work outside of England. I mean, in total, he scores 182 professional club goals. So really not shabby, especially when you say he'd had 3 years where he had bad injuries at Milan as well.
Yeah, Rangers, by the looks of it, are by far and away the team where he has the most longevity in terms of appearances. Anyway, 5 years there, racking up 165 appearances. I'm also reading that he lived with Paul Gascoigne for a bit during that time.
And that's
Uh,
when he left.
yeah, so I think when Gascoigne was signed for Rangers, they said live with Haitley for a fortnight. He's also got he's also got an autobiography out. Can you guess what it's called?
The big man.
My Story.
Wow.
I'm
It's
doing it a disservice actually. It's called Hitting the Mark. My Story.
right. Okay. Hitting the mark. Does it sound like it sounds like that's an actor's like title, like
Yeah,
hitting your spot or hitting your mark when you're like on the stage?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a pun, isn't it?
Well, I think it's just hit me with a cross because he was that exact kind of player of just a big player who would be heading the ball. I mean, like I said, he kind of gets a bit forgotten. And I guess even at the time, people wouldn't know what kind of footballer he was because they'd only see him play for England. Because you're not going to be able to watch AC Milan games. You're not going to be able to really watch Monaco games, even Rangers games. I know that he gets brought in when Sky becomes a big thing. So maybe there's a bit more of a chance there. But the only thing I can really describe him as is, or compare him to, is like if Andy Carroll took the Owen Hargreaves like route to success.
Maybe. Well, yeah. There's quite a lot of similarities in terms of his injuries and stuff as well.
Yeah, and I
I'm
guess Andy Carroll had to live with Kevin Nolan as well. So again, similarities with Gascoigne and Haitley.
I'm wondering whether Haitley, and I realise that we've gone down the path here, would have crossed paths with Fabio Capello because he was AC Milan manager in 1987,
Oh, he
and
probably booted him out the door.
let me just have a quick look here.
A precursor to hating everything English, Fabio Capello.
Yeah, the Independent, October 2009. Mark Haitley, chosen by Capello and rejected by Clough, but still kicking every ball.
This is
So
like
there you
kicking
go.
every player.
I mean, he's not kicking every ball, is he? Not in 2009. But yeah, maybe one for another day. We figure
Yeah.
out the Capello Haitley link because it's all linked England.
It's all there, mate. It is. So then, speaking of England as well, he makes his debut for England in 1984 against the USSR and scores the other goal in the Maracanã against Brazil in his second game. So that famous John Barnes goal, it ends 2-0 that game, and Haitley's the one who gets the other goal that day too. Again, often forgotten.
Zelig, just
Yeah,
kind of in the background of all these things. We've
he's
gone on
like
a
that.
right Mark Haitley detour here.
I know, yeah. Well, again, we just got a bit of context around it because Haitley goes on a good run of form for England here. Starting that first 86 qualifier against Finland, scoring twice, scores the winner against Northern Ireland before the Rous Cup game in Scotland as well. He starts that game against Scotland in the Rous Cup, and he also then scores against Italy in Mexico, and just carries on starting for England. So he is seen really as he's the person with the shirt And Lineker's not really a thing yet. He's playing for England, but he's not kind of like taking it. It's like, right, Mark Hateley's got to play. We've just got to find someone to play with him.
That's wild to think about, isn't it? It's just like you look at his career and the fact it starts in 1978 and ends in 1999. I mean, by that
Yeah,
point, he's making 2 appearances for Ross County, but that was like that the back end of the 70s through to the mid 90s is
yeah.
just the
Well, the late 90s.
probably some of the most like the most change has
Yeah.
happened in football over that period that could be imaginable.
I mean, the change takes hold of him as well because he's very bald by the end of it too. Like compared to like his like flowing locks in the mud that he's got in Milan as well.
Every picture I see of him, he looks different.
Yeah, it's
Literally
just
every
it's like a
picture.
different actor playing someone. It's like that Bob Dylan film.
Yeah. I'm not here. I'm Mark Hateley. Right. So he's competing with Lineker, or are they playing as a partnership? You're saying, sorry, or is it a bit of
Yeah,
both?
it's a bit of both really. So England have got a really important game in Turkey at home to Turkey. Actually, Turkey aren't the force they would be 15 years later, and are very much the whipping boys around this time. England win 8-0 in Turkey in one of the early qualifiers, and then follow it up with a 5-0 win in Wembley, sealing England's place in the 1986 World Cup. And in this game,
Hey.
Lineker scores a hat trick for England in what was only his fourth England start. So he's kind of being kept out of the picture by Hateley at this point. But this is seen as maybe like, okay, should we be doing something different? Should we be playing them both? Which is what Bobby Robson does start to do. I mean, Lineker says he's only started 4 games for England at this point, but he still manages to collect 6 goals in his first 9 caps for England. So even though he's not playing every time, he's still doing well and scoring.
Yep. Sorry, I was just looking at pictures of Mark Hateley. You can really go down the rabbit hole with him and his different looks and the kits he's worn over the years. I
Oh,
swear.
incredible.
Yeah. So well done, Gary Lineker. Anyway, not
Yeah,
to distract from his emergence in the front line. And as you
yeah,
say,
totally.
England are over the line. They're going back to Mexico, right?
Yeah, they'll be back to Mexico, and like we said, Haitley and Lineker end up playing 20 times with each other for England. But because of what happens in '86 at the World Cup, where England kind of switch the team around again, it always seems to happen. If England do well at a tournament, their original team is thrown out the window, and Haitley is kind of the person who is cast aside by Robson during the tournament, and they stick with Gary Lineker. And Lineker obviously goes on to win the Golden Boot and do great things and become an all-time great for England. And it's Haitley who's kind of just forgotten about.
Interesting. Interesting. We haven't touched the '86 World Cup at all. I don't think really.
No, not really. I think we'll end up talking about it a little bit next week before the build up to the third round of the Rous Cup. But I think we'll probably gloss over it because it's one that we maybe want to cover because there's quite a famous game in that. I don't know if we're aware.
Yeah, the hand of Haitley.
So yeah, exactly. It should have been. What could have been?
Oh no, it was perfect for him as well. Oh
Yeah.
dear. So we're going to the World Cup then. Is that it for England? We've qualified. No more money spinners. No more home nation. Well, we know it's
Well,
not there because there is the Rous Cup as well.
Well, we say no more silliness. The last game of qualifications a 0-0 draw at home to Northern Ireland, but it's smiles all round as Northern Ireland collect the point they need to also qualify for Mexico '86. So just a couple of old mates just doing each other favors.
Who were? They were playing each other. Oh God, that was
Yeah,
stupid. Okay.
last game 0-0. They both end up going, and you think right, that's enough now. Qualified, let's just carry on. But England, they get their place and they do the most sensible thing that you could do, and they book a friendly in Cairo in January.
What's the
And
weather
then,
like out in Cairo in January? I'm going to guess hot.
yeah, could be, as well as one in Israel in February.
Yeah.
Just what is going on?
Is that is there any logic in maybe we may play teams from those parts of the world
I
in the
don't know
group?
because World Cup qualification is done for everybody. Everyone knows if they're going in the December, so they've had to book this like well in advance. So I think that maybe some of the other teams were a bit tied up. I don't really know, but anyway, just to complete the admin side, England beat Egypt 4-0, as well as scraping to a 2-1 win in Tel Aviv thanks to Brian Robson goals. Like we say, at this point as well, England are playing once a month. So
Yeah.
every so this is just so regular. So if you think like after 4 Premier League games, like that break's annoying. Literally every month you'd have to stop. So you're only getting like 3 league games in.
Jesus Christ, yeah. And they're not exactly worthy. No
No,
offense
I mean, yeah,
to the
we say there's
USSR
some
or
we
Israel or
say there's
whatever.
some bad games, but this is it where it's like, what are England doing about this point? But yeah, they are, like we said, they play the USSR in Tbilisi, which again I can't really understand why that's happened. Maybe there's some political thing that I'm just not thinking of. But yeah, that's it. England now. It's April. It's time to focus on the Rous Cup and play Scotland. And you know, before we get to the game, we're going to have a look as well at what Scotland have been up to in this time as well, because you know they've got a lot going on themselves.
A lot. A lot is a lot. So after sealing the Rous Cup with a win over England, the next stop for Scotland is Iceland. Again, just perfectly fine. This is what the world needs. We need international games all the time with no sense of planning or logistics beforehand. Yeah, 3 days later, that is, and Scotland win 1-0 thanks to a very late goal from Jim Bett. Um, but it's in the manager's seat where the kind of I'm going to say drama. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's underselling it somewhat, as we'll see. But at this point, anyway, Scotland are managed by legendary Celtic manager Jock Stein. He had already been manager of Scotland back in 1965. That is a long time before.
Yeah.
He's got a big old break, and he's done very well with Celtic during that break. Celtic became the first British side to win the European Cup. That was in 1967. Also under Jock, they've won 10 Scottish championships,
It's a
eight
lot.
Scottish. 10 is a lot. Eight Scott. That's
Too many.
Brendan Rodgers esque. Uh, 8 Scottish Cups, six Scottish League Cups, and 5 Glasgow Cups. Um, I think we've spoken about Glasgow Cup before. We probably have.
Probably. If it felt like some more like a joke. 'Cause it's like, okay, how many teams are in Glasgow?
Yeah.
I'm going to say not many.
But here's the big, the big tick in his box. Stein was the first manager to win what people would refer to as the treble. So not when you have to caveat it with a treble, the big
Hmm.
one. And he's the only manager to win the quadruple. So that's 3 major domestic trophies and the European Cup. Busy boy,
Great going.
busy boy. I'm worried about, back-to-back Rous Cup defeats under this guy.
I know,
Um,
yeah.
so he wasn't manager in '85. Is that right then?
He would have been manager in 85, yes. And the thing, I just look at Steen as well, he's got like a big, great, thick bit of hair as well.
Is it Steen or Stein? Because I don't want to keep getting it wrong. Steen?
I don't know. I'm saying Steen. I don't think it's bad either way. I'm going to say Steen.
I'll follow your lead. But you're saying
Okay.
he's got a
You
lovely
follow
head
my
of hair.
Steen. I think he's
Yeah.
got a great big fat chid of hair, hasn't he? Proper like old school 60s, just combs it with butter.
Yeah. I definitely like some sort of margarine spread.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah, Christ, yeah. It's like combed back to about halfway and then he just lets it go because who looks at the back of your head? Nobody.
No
They're only,
need.
they're only looking at the front. I mean, he's a busy guy. He's also just got a lot going on in his personal sort of health wise around this time. So in 1975, Steen was badly injured in a car crash and took a temporary leave of absence from his position as manager. This is Celtic manager, but would return during the 1976 to 1977 season, which would be his last at Celtic. He would then take the Scotland job.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that goes on in between this as well, actually, which is there's a lot more shenanigans that's kind of going on here too.
Go on then, go on.
So in 77, 78, Steen stood down from his position as Celtic manager, but didn't feel like he was really ready to retire either. So instead, he does what anyone does when they're not really keen on going back into management. They take the Leeds job.
Yeah, that's a nice break. No pressure.
Yeah,
Very sort of accepting fan base.
Yeah, much like one of his predecessors, Brian Clough, he would also leave the job just over 40 days as well.
Wow. For the same reasons, do you think? Big falling out?
It wasn't quite a falling out. The Leeds board were quite happy. They'd appointed him and they were doing fine, but it was a strange courtship between Scotland and Steen, with Steen using his connections in the media to link himself to the Scotland job, and was quoted in saying, "There is little I can say about the situation. If Scotland want me, they must approach the club first." But he's also going, "All right, can you guys put the rumor out that I'm interested?"
Yeah, yeah. I can't say anything, but here are the specific instructions as to how to get me out of this contract. If you follow them, that is up to you.
Use the word banjo. They have to let me go.
Yeah. And was this you said one of his predecessors, Brian Clough, was he his actual predecessor? Was there something in between the two?
Yeah, there was a couple of years gap in between that, but after the recent disaster with Brian Clough, Leeds were really keen to hang on to Steen as well around this time, which meant that Steen actually had to resign from his position to take the Scotland role instead of like an agreement being in place. He was like, "Well, they can't do it. I'm going to have to leave." And it turns out that he leaves 44 days into his tenure at Leeds, the exact amount of time that Brian Clough was in charge as well.
There you go. Did what was the American Jesse Marsh? He must have lasted longer than that.
Yeah, you'd imagine so. I think he had, yeah, because he had like a pre-season in between as well, didn't he? Hold Marshy.
Yeah. There you go. But he does eventually take his rightful seat at the head of Scotland in the managerial
The big
position.
throne.
That's in 1978. And he remained in the post with Scotland on the verge of qualifying for the World Cup. They would face former home championship rivals Wales away at Ninian Park in Cardiff in the final qualifier. Another late goal would rescue them a point, a draw, and qualification at the expense of Wales. So Scotland,
See,
they're quite nasty, aren't they? Scotland at this in
but
this time, they're like they don't
it's
mind
it's
sticking it to you.
it's good, isn't it though? Because England and Northern Ireland are doing big kisses in the corner,
Yeah,
just having one last final fling, while this absolute firebomb of like Wales and Scotland fighting it out for one final place. It's just
yeah,
like these jilted lovers, and oh, how different it could have been.
yep. And I don't even the next you know development in this story is tragic. As Jock Stein suffered a pulmonary edema. Um, and I mean, he died. Was it during the game?
It was just after the game, yeah. Just so due to the stress of the situation and his ill health in the build up to the game, Steen did die in the medical room at Ninian Park at 62 after the game, which is crazy,
That
really.
is
I didn't know this until researching it. I knew that I didn't even know he died as still a manager. And Steen really will be remembered as one of the great idols in Scottish football for what he'd done for the sport, and has to go down as one of the most revered and influential managers almost that the game has ever seen. Because you look at that success at Celtic, and you can say, "Oh, Scottish League, whatever," but that is like still incredible. And winning the
and
European Cup,
European Cups.
the first British team to do it, to be so successful at a big club, to stay there for so long, and get Scotland on the absolute verge of qualification for the World Cup as well.
I don't think you hear about him in the same. I mean, that is some resume, but you don't
Mm,
really hear about him. I don't anyway, as one of the all time greats. I mean, 62 probably still had a fair amount to do. I'm not sure how much. I mean, he
yeah,
could have done the Rous Cup double,
yeah,
but
well, exactly, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why you don't really hear about him along.
I think it's also because you've got Busby, who's Scottish as well around this time, and Shankly as well. And
Yeah,
I think they all knew each other. They were all from Scotland. They may have all been from the same area of Scotland from memory too. So it was just kind of like an incredible piece. I think there's a documentary on Amazon about the three of them as well. And he's kind of because we're English and we don't, would think of the success in Scotland compared to what happened at Liverpool and Man United. Maybe that's why we wouldn't think that as well.
yeah, maybe overshadowed by his peers, and also what would come after. So his replacement, I had no idea about this either.
Mm,
As a Man United fan, I never knew Ferguson, Sir Alex Ferguson, currently at the time Aberdeen manager and just going by Alex Ferguson,
mm.
would step in to take over. So maybe that's part of the reason why Steen's legacy may not be kind of held as in such high regard in England, as you
Mm.
say, kind of his peers, and then he kind of paved the way for Sir Alex, who stepped in to manage Scotland.
Yeah, he'd been the assistant manager for Steen as well, so it was seen as just like, okay, Scotland had only qualified for a playoff spot at this point, so they'd not made it to the World Cup. So Ferguson stepped up to hopefully get Scotland to the tournament. In their qualifier, their opponents to go and play over in, get that sweet taste of Mexican tournament would be Australia.
Has there ever been as many flight miles in an episode of Is This England as we've seen today?
There surely can't be. Again, I'm just not even going to go into the admin of why on earth Australia are playing Scotland for a place in the World Cup when it's like European qualifying, but maybe Scotland had got like the fewest points, so didn't automatically get to go. Like Northern Ireland got to go.
Yeah, because we did them a favor.
Exactly. So I don't quite know what happened there, but huge, huge game. And in the October, Scotland had a warm up against East Germany at home, drawing 0-0 at Hampden. But on the 20th of November 1985, it was their big first leg against Australia. 2 goals in 3 minutes from Davy Cooper and Frank McAvenny was enough to giving Scotland the decisive first leg lead against the Socceroos.
Good on ya. So it looks like they're going to be represented, and Ferguson going to a World Cup.
Yeah, pretty much. Scotland then travelled to literally the other side of the world to play in Melbourne, a month later on the 4th of December and secured a 0-0 draw that got them to Mexico 86.
Congratulations to Scotland.
They've
We're
done
all
it.
going. We're all going.
All the
Except
lads, sorry, Wales.
except for Wales. I mean, the emotion of securing that qualification must have been absolutely huge. And I feel like this Scotland team, as we kind of cover in this era, not saying that there would have been favourites or anything near to favourites, but they're certainly like on a par with England, and England are kind of held in relatively high regard kind of all the time, if that makes sense. I mean, I know we were
Yeah.
suffering a little bit, but I don't think they're going there to just make up the numbers. I think is the way I'd put it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like I say, I think the World Cup before is probably a Scotty. That's probably the best Scotland team ever. But then you still got the the remembrance of this as well, and we're going to go through the teams in a minute from the day of the game too. And it's still star-studded Scotland lineup really, and we'll go down as one of the best.
Are we falling in love with Scotland like we
Head
like
over
we have
heels in love.
like we have done previously with England's opponents over the years? I'm kind of developing a bit of a soft spot for this 80s Scotland.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think when we see a couple of the brutes that are in the team as well, it may slightly change. But it's been a big ride, hasn't it? And you'll be glad to know as well that Scotland themselves arranged their own strange visit to Israel in January 1986 as well.
Yeah.
Playing a game out there as England would do a month later. Scotland win 1-0 with a Paul McStay goal and start their own warm-up to the Rous Cup by defeating Romania 3-0 at Hampden in the March. And then it's Rous Cup time.
So let's start looking at the game then. You know, it's all well and good having World Cup qualifications and friendlies in Israel and bloody tournaments in Mexico, but both teams focus at all times would be on the Rous Cup.
Yeah, has
which
to
will-
be.
the final of which takes place at Wembley Stadium on the 23rd of April 1986. England's, I've just saw the Scotland keeper's name, Alan Rough. I'll start with Scotland. I'll start with
You start with
Scotland.
Scotland, yes.
Yeah, okay. In goal, Alan Rough. At right back, Richard Gough. Centre backs, Alex McLeish and Willie Miller. Morris Malpass at left back. Midfield, Roy Aitken, Steve Nicol, Graham Souness, captain, obviously. Eamon Bannon, or Eamon Bannon. And up front, David Speedy, the return of Speedy. And Charlie Nicholas. On the bench, we have the likes of Andy Gorham, David Neri, Arthur Albiston, Paul McStay, who we mentioned earlier, is getting a goal. Same for Jim Bett. Pat Nevin as well. So, is that Scottish team? It's kind of similar to the 85 one, I think. I don't
Yeah,
think that.
not too dissimilar. Is it Richard Goff starts again, who got the winner last time out as well? Dalglish not playing for Scotland again, just not into the Rouse Cup.
That's made me. He's gone down in my estimations.
When he said when he didn't turn up for the Rouse Cup, he disrespected Stan.
Yeah, and there's a few other names out, isn't there? Gordon Strachan, Graham Sharp, Alan Hansen. Yeah, that's Scotland.
That is, you cannot deny, a Scottish team.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to have a look at England?
Yep, England start with Peter Shilton in goal. They have Gary Stevens, Dave Watson, Terry Butcher, and Kenny Sampson at left back. Steve Hodge, Glenn Hoddle, and Ray Wilkins in the midfield. And then Chris Waddle, Mark Haitley, and Trevor Francis in the forward position. So Haitley rides again.
Hey, yeah. I mean that's the headline really.
Yeah.
No Lineker, no John Barnes, no Peter Beardsley. Are England taking this lightly?
No Brian Robson either, which is disappointing. But I guess it's hard to know really if Robson is. I'm assuming injured, just always injured. You know, he'd have these great games for England and Man United, and then just when the real crunch time was coming, his body would just let him down. Probably the 20 pints a day he was drinking.
You said it, not me. Steve Hodge. I'm not sure I've heard much of Steve Hodge or Dave Watson
No,
previously.
no, they're not ones I'm totally versed with either. England, you know the names, but I feel Kenny Sampson did a lot of punditry at one point, maybe on the radio.
Yeah, that
Feels
name.
like that kind of name, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely rings a bell, and his face rings a bell.
His
Make
face
of
rings a bell.
make of that what you will. God, if you Google him, one of the people also ask, is is Kenny Sansom still in hospital?
Oh God!
He's not. He's out
Still
of hospital. And I'm
good
just like checking.
breaking news.
Yeah, exactly. Bloody hell.
Another
Anyway,
chance for Hoddle though. After he kind of was seen to have not impressed and things hadn't gone right for him last time out,
well,
it's
yeah,
kind of Hoddle's time again.
things hadn't gone right for him, so they demanded that the team be built around him in the studio afterwards.
But even when
Classic.
it was, they weren't happy because he didn't play well. It's such a weird time, isn't it? Where it feels like I said, this is the first one of the you've just got to play him. When it doesn't work, get him out of the team. You can't rely on him. But then when you've always got that thing of that tantalizing thing of Hoddle. I think we're going to have to do like a really, I'm not saying this isn't a big game, but like a really big game around this period of like, did it work for Glenn Hoddle?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm all for it. We usually take a look at the kits. Not much to note really, by the way, of
Kind
the
of the
kits.
same as last time, I feel.
Kind of the same at last time. The picture quality is bad on the video as well. You can't make out the detail. However, the officials are wearing red tops with like white rugby collars, red socks, and white shorts, and it looks really off-putting.
It's awful, isn't it? It is like another sport has entered the pitch by accident. Like it just doesn't feel right. It was just like, wait a minute, this shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, definitely. And as I say, the picture quality on the video we watched was bad, but I did find a picture of some sort of ceremonial gift giving before the game between Wilkins and Souness, where it kind of looks to me. You've got the referee standing in the background. I don't know what they're doing there, but it looks to me like Souness has like found Wilkins' dog, and he's gone like, here, here's your gift. Take a picture for the local newspaper. And
Yeah.
Souness just has the look of like, I need to get back to the pub. This is a drain of my time.
This is pure drinking time that's being brought into here. It also looks like Souness is holding a cop like a DVD of a football match, like DVD,
yeah,
like a
yeah.
case, 'cause it's got like a football on it, and it's just like, oh, he's like got again, it's like Venables hooky videos or something.
Yeah. To be fair, that would be the world's first DVD, which would
It,
be
it would. Graham Souness invented the DVD.
into the game. There's an early mention on commentary of Charlie Nicholas being keen to make amends for that performance at Wembley years ago. Do you have any idea as to what they could be referring to?
One of the thousands of England v Scotland games that maybe they played in. I don't know. It's just there is actually no way of knowing what they're on about at this point. I think we've got Scottish commentary again, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah. I think that yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later on. The quality in the early stage of the game isn't great for my money. Lots of fouls resulting in poorly taken free kicks. There's lots of big hoofs from Peter Shilton, who could be asked to turn up. I mean,
This week,
yeah, I'm not quite. I mean, he's got more caps for England than anyone else. I
than
think.
literally any other human. Yeah.
He turned up a lot, but he also didn't. He also threw. We've spoke about him throwing his toys out the pram. Yeah, and just wingers simply running it out of play. They ran out of pitch.
Great.
Yeah, it's that.
Enormous quality.
There is a nice run, however, quite early on from Steve Hodge, who plays a decent cutback into the box for a shot that is well wide, a sign of things to come. Really, when there is quality in this game, stamp it out. In spite of that, the opening goal comes after 27 minutes, courtesy of Terry Butcher. Nick, can you guess how Terry Butcher would score this goal?
Lovely looping ball off his foot into the top corner. Or am I going mad? Or is it just a big fuck off header?
Let's find out.
So every Scotsman back inside the box. Now this may well come from the training ground, this move. Francis is there. So is Hoddle. So is Wilkins. Butcher right in the thick of it. Hoddle's flighted ball, and once again the value of Richard Goff. It was Butcher. 1-0 to England. And it came from the free kick. Terry Butcher gets his third goal for England in the 28th minute of the match. Just when it looked as though Richard Goff had saved the day for Scotland.
It's a big fuck off header.
The best British goal possible for the Rous Cup.
The ball is hoofed into the box from a free kick. There's a poor attempted header away from Scotland, which just basically punts it up in the air in the penalty area. It's then headed back across goal by Hodge. And yeah, it's a thumping headed finish from the glorious brute. Butcher, thoughts?
Yeah, it's but England do something really weird. They really fuck about with the ball before they put it into the area, which I found weird. There's 3 players stood over the ball, waiting to just literally one player could just chip it in, and then the player on the left hand side just rolls it to the player on the right. The one on the right, and it's been moved by an inch at this point, and the other player stops it, and then Hoddle chips it in. It's like, you fucking perfectionist Glenn Hoddle, like, well, that ball is an inch, I need it the other side. And in fairness, there's a goal that comes out of it, but it does, like, it bounces off 3 different players' heads and doesn't hit the floor before it goes into the back of the net. So it wasn't like a really well worked free kick. It was like a good idea that just somehow managed to go in.
On the subject of kind of dicking about and what have you, these days I think if they were dicking about like that, the players off the ball would be doing the movement. But it's like
Yeah.
the people in the box stay as they are,
Yeah.
while the 3 people standing around the ball try to catch you off guard. It's not. Yeah.
It just didn't feel like there was any need in it. Like, it felt like the end result was Glenn Hoddle chipped the ball into the box, and he just chips the ball into a box an inch by the side of where he was going to do it anyway. It's not like when you move like the ball and then like a whole new part of the goal becomes open. He's just putting it on like near the penalty area.
Well, it did the bloody trick, and on 43 minutes, England take a 2-0 lead, courtesy of another diving header.
Waddle. Good running by Sansom. Good save from Rob. And a rebound shot. It was Glenn Hoddle. And England are 2 ahead. Well, that's been coming since
and this is very diving. To be fair, I'll say this: it was a tasty long range shot by
Yeah.
Samson, parried high and the way by the Roughman in the net, old Ruffy. Um, and yeah, it kind of looks like he's made a save there. A Scotland defender might get to it. Glenn Hoddle flies through space and time to get his beautiful head onto it. He's salmon-esque, and we have breathing room.
It's the most unhoddle goal you could
Yeah.
ever imagine. Could you do imagine him just chipping it into the top corner like I thought Butcher would have? But he scored such a weird one, and also the Scotland keeper makes the save, Ruff does, but he's also running back to try and get the goal out of the net, and it's not got in the net yet. Like he's just trying to like catch a bus or something. Like, oh, fuck! Like he's got his head down, properly running.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it cuts to Bobby Robson looking absolutely bored shitless as his team close in on Rous Cup glory. Come on, Bobby. Where's your spirit, man? So in a first half low on quality, obviously, England have shown more determination to head that ball over that line and lead by 2 goals.
It's like that is the only skill you can use in like the game, but you're literally only allowed to score with headers.
Yeah, it's coming home.
Yeah, Rous Cup coming home, hopefully. Well, and they say you get into the second half, Scotland start to try and get a bit more quality on the ball themselves. They're not really giving it up, and then there is a big decision that comes up pretty much straight away.
Yeah, let's have a listen.
Second half, England 2, Scotland 0, but Scotland now with an overlap. Charlie Nicholas, down he goes, that'll be a penalty kick, all right. No question about it. Butcher is despondent, but he can have no complaints at all. He was skinned by Nicholas, who's still on the ground. With Scotland getting 3 against 2. Nicholas showing his conviction, going in, and perhaps a shade of doubt about whether it was inside or outside the box. The referee was in no doubt at all, and Scotland have a great opportunity now to get back in the match.
Clever play there from Charlie, because he only had one intention, that was to go for a penalty.
Scotland are given a lifeline then when a questionable penalty is given. Let's talk about the commentary reaction, and then we'll look at our own thoughts. Jock Brown, great name. You've probably
Brilliant
already
name.
heard of him, but I haven't. He says there's shades of doubt as to whether Butcher brought down Charlie Nicholas inside the England penalty area. He also believes that there can be no complaints from Butcher because he was skinned by the Scotsman. Lou Macari says, great play there from Charlie. He's got us back in the game. Let's hope we can score. So never one for unbiased commentary on Lou Macari.
The great Lou Macari, yeah.
So if you just listening to the commentary, it's all fine. It's great play. He skinned him. And maybe there's a shade of doubt. How would you describe this penalty?
I would describe that as not in the box.
I
That's
would
how I would
100%
describe
describe
this.
that as not in the. They're so outside the box. Like both men are stood outside the box.
Yeah, it's not like even when like players are like they grab a hold of a shirt, they go into the box and go down and go, well, the first contact was actually outside the box, even though that doesn't actually matter for anything anymore. But yeah, he's clearly outside the box. And it's really weird because Charlie Nicholas actually stays down for quite a long time and it doesn't look like there's much contact. I think
Yeah.
Butcher's foot comes down on top of Nicholas's foot. But because when he kind of hurtles himself over, I think he dislocates his shoulder because he lands on his arm and he looks in absolute agony. And you think, all right, this is the days before really bad diving and things like that. Men were men and all this kind of crap. And you just think, oh, he does look quite injured. And maybe he's just thinking, oh, maybe this is definitely winning as this penalty. But he doesn't look in a good shape.
Yeah. As you say, he stays there. I mean, if that didn't injure him, then the way he's carried off by the Scottish medical staff must have. I mean, I was fascinated. They lift him, they lift him up by both of his legs, and just hold him. I don't know how it's almost like they're 3/4 of the way towards lifting somebody up when you lift them over your head. But then they've just kept him 3/4 of the way, so his waist is at about neck height of the medical staff who've got a leg each and are just holding him up.
It's like they're at like a function room and they're trying to lift like a really heavy chair.
Yeah.
And they're just
Yeah.
like, right, come on, we've got
Come
to
on, get a
move this.
leg.
The dancing started in half an hour. We've just got to get rid of this. Give me an hand with this chair. Where like, they've each got two of the legs over their shoulders.
This slate chair.
Also,
And
with that as well, because of the shorts that we mentioned last week, he looks just really weird. Because again, it looks like he's kind of like his short is like it's just up around his back, like the inside of his shorts, maybe. But that's just the pattern.
he looks like his legs are about 5 inches long.
He does. Well, did they not have stretchers?
Well, they must have had stretchers. Is a stretcher a good thing for a dislocated shoulder? Is
Well,
that just going?
It's got to be safer than just lifting him like that,
It's
like
like
in this awful
your
manner.
your arm's not going to touch anything, but if we drop you, you are fucked.
Yes,
Like,
that's gone. That's a big surgery, and this is the 80s. You may not get your shoulder back.
but chances are we're not going to drop you, so we just keep that shoulder above everything by lifting you halfway up on our.
I mean, these
shoulder.
are medical professions as well. These are professional medical people.
Well, I really doubt it after watching that.
Yeah.
That was the best bit of the game. But anyway,
Yeah.
the commentary team believe that Nicholas would have taken the penalty, so they start to wonder who's going to step up for the challenge. Enter mustachioed hard man Graham Souness, who's going to need all of his balls of steel to bang this one in.
Anymore, certainly in a penalty kick incident. Well, a very sad sight for Scotland as Charlie Nicholas is carried off. The penalty kick will be taken by the Scottish captain Graham Souness. Souness facing Shilton. Perfectly stopped. And Scotland are back in the match. 12 minutes into the second half. Graham Souness gets only his fourth goal for Scotland, but brings the Scottish fans to life. Well, a great effort this from Shilton, diving to his right, but it was hit hard.
And he does it. Wembley erupts with Scottish pride. It is quite a loud roar, considering
Yeah.
that the away side. He was always going to score that bloody penalty, wasn't he? The hard bastard.
He was, yeah. He just looks so assured of himself when he's taking the penalty as well. It's absolutely like perfectly placed as well. It's right into the corner, but with so much power that like Shilton's got no chance. Like Shilton guesses the right way as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he just gets nowhere near it. And the commentator's like, no goalkeeper in the world would have gotten that. It's like, yeah, you're probably right there.
Yeah, another win for Scotland there. They've got
Yeah.
the unsavable penalty. Yeah, perfect, really. 2-1. Then there's about 30 minutes to play still. England kind of instantly switching to keep this fucking lead for God's sake mode.
The
Scotland
classic.
Scotland, yeah, it works. And it's funny how it works almost 50 years later. You know? You just keep doing it for as long as possible, really. But Scotland continue to press, but it's not great. I mean, it's hard to explain how many crosses and hoof balls are attempted. There is a similar characteristic throughout that they all lack quality. England go on to look like they look like the stronger team in that they've got better players, but they also look tired. Whereas Scotland don't necessarily have the quality, but they're fired up by being the away team, by just having the most recent goal, and they want to achieve double Rous glory. With a minute or two, though, to go, we cut to an image of a frustrated Alex Ferguson who looks like he knows the jig's up. Crossing the ball directly out of play just isn't going to be enough for Scotland. That was I watched the highlights before I'd read any of the notes. And then when Ferguson just popped up, I was like, oh, what is he doing here? What are you doing here? Scotland's attempts actually to try and get it back are so poor that the stream of the match, the full match that is, just cuts out with about a minute to go. There's no, it's not going to happen. I think it goes and it's out for a corner. Dead.
The end. I think they also miss off the right at the start of the game as well.
Yeah. England's name on the trophy. We don't get a ceremony, a visual ceremony like last time.
No.
But we should be happier. We should be happier because ceremony or no ceremony, the result is that the Rous Cup is in England's hands.
It's home finally again, isn't it? It's home. Yeah, and quite fitting. England win this game on St George's Day. So
Yeah.
just absolutely perfect as well. I saw in the YouTube comments someone just said, "Oh, a win against the old enemy on St George's Day. Does it get any better than this?" And I was like, "It clearly gets a lot better than this."
Yeah, definitely. Christ almighty, mate, get a life. But yeah, that's it for England. They have another trophy to add. You know what? This podcast has made me realise that England have won quite a lot of trophies.
They've won a lot of shit, haven't they? And they've taken part in even more shit.
I'm just reading some of the comments here as well. Great stuff. This is by Kailash Patel. Watching this match along with the previous pre-Mexico friendly against the Soviet Union, it's not entirely clear why Bobby did not realise that Reed and Hoddle worked in that midfield. That Hod's best position was in the middle, and that Hodge on the left, Lineker and Beardsley up front. No, Haitley.
No, it's
That's in brackets.
disgraceful.
And a flat back four was the way to approach the '86 World Cup. The sticking issue was whether to play Waddle, maybe on the right, while playing Trevor Steven proved to be the right call. A man after our own hearts.
I think
Jesus
so.
Christ.
I think the issue there clearly is Robson not playing because he was the captain. He was the best player in the country, you know, for a lot of the time as well. So you kind of think, okay, well, where does that work? And it's almost having you've got a more balanced team maybe there. Maybe you play Reed and Robson, but you've still got Hoddle clearly impressing in this game as well. So and like we say, when England do go to Mexico '86, they do have to change their team a hell of a lot, as is customary with England teams at tournaments, just having to throw everything out of the window and just go with what you got, and that kind of works better at times.
Yeah. I mean, I'm. You really gave a good response back to that comment there. I was just fascinated that somebody had taken the time. I suppose they've taken the time to do a YouTube comment. We've taken the time to do about 3 hours and counting of podcasting on these games.
And there's more to come. Let's say that
Yeah, let's just
we've
say
not
that.
even got onto. Can we just say we've not even got onto the weirdest bit?
No, yeah, well, absolutely. So the Rose Cup is in English hands, but there's a lot more to go in this storied journey of one of football's most fabled trophies. I think we can say join us next time when we continue our Rose Cup journey.